Hello and welcome to this week's Desmond's Donders. Not in Desmond today. I'm sat in the man cave or radio shack or computer room or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to talk this week about a subject close to my heart, and that is wild camping in Scotland. Did you know it's illegal? Right, let's start with a disclaimer. 1, I'm not a lawyer, and 2, go and do your own research. I'll put some links in the video description which will point to some of the links I'm going to talk about. Now, quite a flippant intro, but technically wild camping in a motorhome in Scotland is illegal. So that statement sets off this video. Why is it illegal? Well, that's easy. Many people on the internet claim that wild camping in Scotland is enabled by the Land Reform Act 2003. And in fact, yes it is. But at the same time, it specifically mentions motorhomes and motorised vehicles and excludes them from the definition of wild camping. Right? And if you want to go and have a look at it, the section you need to look at is the Land Reform Act 2003. It is Chapter 2, Section 9, subparagraph G. Right? And what it basically says is you can't. Go and look it up. I do have the quote and it'll probably pop up later in the video. But the Land Reform Act 2003 and the Scottish Outdoor Access Code are not what give us the right to wild camp. Because what we do, by definition now, is not wild camping. But what it doesn't say is that you have a right to park. Yeah? You have a right to park in all sorts of places. To have a close look at what those rights are, you need to know the Road Traffic Act. Now, the Road Traffic Act has various issues and additions, and some of it is Scotland only, that's the Road Traffic Act Scotland, and some of it is the UK, the Road Traffic Act. So how does this give us a right to park? Because in there it states, buried away, that there has to be sufficient places, rest areas, etc. for you to stop. Now, there are also caveats where you can't stop, but we'll come to those as well. So, what are we going to call it? We can't call it wild camping anymore, because after all, that's illegal. That's maybe just a discussion for another video, but basically we are parking. We call it wild parking, free parking, parking where you like, but we are parking a vehicle under the provisions of the Road Traffic Act. So as I said earlier, I'm not a lawyer, but this bit I'm going to read out for you. This is the actual part from the Land Reform Act 2003, which says that you cannot wild camp in a motorised vehicle. The Land Reform Act 2003, Section 9, conduct excluded from access rights. The conduct which within this section is, and that's where I got it wrong earlier, it wasn't G, it was F, being on or crossing land in or with a motorised vehicle or vessel other than a vehicle or vessel which has been constructed or adapted for use by a person who has disability and which is being used by such a person. In other words, your motorised vehicle is excluded from the access rights. Okay, so we cannot wild camp. We purely park legally under the auspices of the Road Traffic Acts. That's not to say we shouldn't obey the outdoor access codes and the provisos in there for cleaning up and leaving as we found and etc., which we do, even in car parks. So where does this leave us about parking? Well, basically you can park anywhere you can legally park. There are caveats in that, of course, and it would be interesting to know if anybody ever was prosecuted for parking, what their lawyers did about it, because there's some very interesting things in the Land Reform Act about how often there should be lay-bys and rest areas and facilities on our roads. And believe you me, in most of Scotland they're not met. So it would be quite easy, I think, to get a case overthrown, but that's not the point really. We are not out to cause trouble, we're not out to cause a fuss, we just want somewhere quiet to park. And nothing is actually stopping us, be that in Scotland, or as far as I can tell, England or Wales either. The only thing that's stopping us is the attitude of other people who, like many of us, don't know better. There are some things that stop us, and council car parks or council owned car parks are one thing, and if they have a car park restriction order or a car parking order or some other bylaw pursuant to parking on a council car park, it must be properly noted. It must have the right information for you to go and read that notification in full. I don't think there's many councils that do, but they should make them available to you if you ask. So if you particularly want to go and park somewhere, you can go and find out why the council is saying no, and if they don't show you, then they're breaking the law, not you. But you shouldn't park in a car park owned by the council and it has a restriction on it, a legal restriction. There is another time you can't park, and that is a traffic restriction order in place, a TRO. As far as I'm aware, there are no TROs in Scotland which restrict parking currently. Doesn't mean there won't be, doesn't mean there haven't been. But currently, if you go and look at the government website, traffic restriction orders, they are mainly allowing for roadworks, repairs, restrictions because there's a procession or a football team doing something or something going on where they have to restrict traffic. So what was all the fuss a few years back about the yellow signs? Well, those yellow signs in themselves were illegal. There's loads on the internet about this, but the man you want to see is Andy Strangeways. I'll again put links to his blogs and links to his to relevant information below, but basically those signs don't have a TRO, have not been authorised, and therefore are not legal. They should have been removed by now or replaced with a proper sign with a restriction and a relevant annotation, so you can go and look up that restriction, which has got to be public. You've got to be able to see it. That's really all I can say. The real debate, I suppose, is, well, what are we going to call it then? Yeah, we call it wilding. We don't park in municipal car parks or things like that. As you know, if you watch this channel, we tend to go in forestry or similar car parks, somewhere where there's places to walk, relax, watch birds and generally enjoy nature. You're really only going to come across problems with wild parking if you insist on parking in towns and cities. That's not what we're about, it's not what I can talk about. But what I will say is there is a difference between private car parks and council car parks. Go and look it up, and it's to do with the penalty fines and what's legal and what isn't. Have you had the ubiquitous knock on the door? Yeah, we have. Only twice. It was the same weekend. Did the police try to move us on? No. What were they doing? They were making sure that we were okay and our vehicle wasn't part of what they were out doing. That's all they wanted to know. They left us alone all night. They were about all night. And if you want to see that, it's the video at Banff about the hoax emergency services call out on Channel 16 VHF for the kayakers that occurred the weekend we were in Banff. So, to summarise, while camping's illegal, well, in the motorhome anyway, the Land Reform Act isn't what people think it is. It doesn't give us, as motorhomers, the rights people think it does. As an aside, the Land Reform Act only came in its present form by accident. It was supposed to be something completely different, but the landowners objected to it full stop, didn't want it at all. So the government of the time in Scotland decided, sod 'em, let's give them what they definitely don't want. And we got what the lovely piece of legislation we have, which gives us access on foot to all these places, and if you want you can overnight in a tent at many of them. So the derivative from there, the Scottish Access Code, is something we should all stick to. It only makes sense to look after the land we live in. We can park in a lot of places. We've talked about the Road Traffic Act and that. There are some restrictions on that. Yeah, great. But there's one point we haven't talked about, and that's the Loch, Lomond and TROSSACHS National Park. I find it quite funny that they seem to be giving permits out, or selling permits, between March and September I think it is, to allow you to do something you're not allowed to do. Well, on the face of it anyway. What they're actually doing is allowing you to have a permit which pre-allocates you a parking space at £3 a night. £3 a night isn't too bad for parking, in fact quite good in some spots for overnight parking. If that's what you want to do, go and do it, but please don't call it wild camping. You're parking £3 a night in the TROSSACHS and Loch Lomond National Park. Thank you for watching. If you did stick it out this far, well done, and we'll see you next week. We'll be back from the Donda and hopefully have some new video of new locations of our beautiful country, Scotland. Goodbye for now.